Welcome to Finnegan's what?
Finnegan begin again.
Finnegan begin again. Today
We are
working on Finnegan's fabricing.
now going to start taking the original fabric off of each of the frame pieces. First thing I'm going to start with, I'm going to get the nails out of the tacking strip that's here so that I can separate it from the frame itself. And then we're going to, in situ, try and take these seams apart. So I'm afraid that this fabric is fragile enough that if I try and unfold it from the padding and springs, it's just going to rip. So I'm just going to take it apart as it sits, piece by piece. So let's get started. All right, now that I've finally separated the bottom, well, except for that one, this backing section from its frame, I've got access to the first seam right here. I'm going to take my handy dandy seam ripper and start going up along ever so gently and breaking the stitches so that we can get each piece out in its entirety. Once you get that first couple stitches cut, it makes it a lot easier afterwards. Now you're going to be tempted to use this kind of like a razor blade or a knife and just go as fast as you can, but that's not a good thing, because you can very easily poke through and then just rip the fabric itself. So it takes a little bit of time, but it's one of those mindless jobs that you can just kind of do, think about other things you have to do, other things that need to get done that you're not doing because you're doing this, but that's okay. I'm occupying my time with this right now. This looks like it may have been the strip for a little bit of piping, something to accentuate the seam that's worn off, rubbed away in its old age. It's good to know. If we chose to replace it with some piping, at least we know that would be original. Now then, it'll be just like that all the way around. All right. So that has separated the top back from the rest of the upholstery. So now we'll be able to take this, lay it out flat, clean it up a little bit so we can actually see how this was constructed. Looks like it's got a little bit of seam tape down here at the end to strengthen and reinforce it. And then when we get our replacement fabric, we can recreate it. But first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark on the back that this is the driver. Yep, the driver front seat, or driver's seat, because I only have the one seat. We're going to use a ballpoint pen. That way we don't leak through. And there we go. Driver's seat back, front. And we should be able to peel the rest of this off. Interesting piece of, well, this is spare carpet. Oh, look at that. That is spare carpet that was left over. From what I understand, Ford would use leftover textiles to put in here. So that went up against the seat back springs. And, oh, cool. Some old original wool carpet. Let's save that. It also has the reinforced little leather section over here for going against the little guide knob over here. Okay, now it's time to remove that last nail here. Let me rip it. I've got a few more over here on the frame. The hard part here is to know whether these are original or if this was just kind of ham-fisted fixing. Well, there's a tack strip back there, so had to be tacked into something. That's just all part of the discovery, right? Like an archaeological dig. Take it apart piece by piece and figure it out. Document. I'll be taking pictures of everything. Okay, it was all just bunched up and bundled. All right. Take this down for a second. All right. Looks like that lost its support over time. It looks like there was a little bit of padding here and some carpet to cover the springs in the back. Probably anti-squeaking. Put that off to the side. All right. Now we'll get this one all torn apart and marked up. right here, we have an old repair. Probably the fabric just ripped and they came along and just hand stitched it in place. But I need to undo this so that I can get a proper pattern off of this. Doesn't matter that the tear is there as long as I have the whole piece and we can lay it out flat on another piece of fabric to cut it out. So I'm gonna rip that repair out right now and re-reveal the hole. All right, so there we go. Yeah, looks like it was just a rip right there, close to where the chair rotates. It's good. So now we have that nice and flat. Looks like it's all there. It was just a simple rip, not a hole, and we can make a good pattern off of that. So what I'm going to do now is, before I take these pieces apart, I'm going to, one, mark each piece for what it is, but then also I'm going to start, I'll put like piece 1, right? So sections. 1, I'll put a 1 here. That way I know that this piece and this piece go together. I'll put a 2 here and a 2 here. 3 here and a 3 here. And so forth as I document all of these seams before I rip them apart. I'm also going to mark up on the fabric where any pieces come together. Say right here, this large set of seams right here that come together. So I'm going to mark this seam right here onto this piece here. That way I have a marker to line up when I go to put these, pin these back together. I know that I need to have this point here lined up with this stitch right here, and so forth, here to here, at every one of those seam junctions to another piece of fabric. That gives me marking points to know where the fabric lines up and should match this appropriately and then fit over the frame of the seat correctly when we get to that point. I'm going to see if I can't iron this carpet out flat. It's working. Doesn't smell very good though. Oh, that's better. Be able to use that for something. Okay, I've got the frame up here, the bottom frame, and I have removed the other side, and I'm about to take the upholstered side of the frame off. I think my dad said it right. I think that this thing may have been underwater with the amount of rust that's down here built up. But this is basically a pocket that's built to go, the upholstery is a pocket that goes around the edge of it. And I have no idea what this insulation is, or padding insulation. But I need to kind of separate the rusted metal to gently get this pocket off. It's kind of adhered itself. The fabric has kind of adhered itself. There we go. And voila. A pocket of fabric that I can recreate with some foam insulation instead of what this is. Hopefully there's no asbestos in it. And now for the big boy. Looks like the tacking strip back here is pretty good, so we'll try and preserve that. I think this one I might be able to unfold from the frame, but we'll see as we get there. Okay, now that that's off, all of the tacks holding it on, let's see if we can't gently, oh, I thought all of them were done. to stab myself something awful. Seems like I didn't even do this section. At least they're coming out easy. Okay. Now maybe. Okay. Oh. Yep, there's a mouse house in there because here's the poop. All right. Okay, let's get this arranged. Okay, we got the fabric removed. Now you can see the padding has kind of folded itself away from the springs. So let's just get that off since there's no sense in saving it. This doesn't seem. All right, got mouse house over here we need to vacuum up. Definitely gonna need to take a shower after this. Now, probably ought to save it so I know how the padding went on. We'll just wrap it in some, put it in a big garbage bag or something. While vacuuming, I found one of the little buggers. Of course, dead, dried, desiccated, now on the floor. But thus far, the only one I have found. So I've been on mouse house here, mouse house all the way over there, mouse house back there. It's just a wonderful house for them to set up. They're not dumb in that sense, but they're going to be gone forever. All right, I've got all of the burlap and insulation and mouse house and everything out. So we've got bare springs. Now, of course, the factory burlapped this intentionally, but you know, with having mice in there and pee everywhere, well, I'm not going to use that because unhealthy, stinky, nasty. We're just going to do this. We could re-burlap this. I'm going to look into that, or we could just wrap it as it is with some new upholstery fabric and foam and modern materials. But again, we'll see where we're at with that. So one thing I've found is we've got some springs that the hog rings have come off. They become loose. We've got a broken wire here for the strapping down on top that we can probably fix, replace, do something. Again, need to do a little research and we'll find out how we're going to tie this back together. But none of the springs look like they're broken, which is a good thing. The frame itself looks like it's still solid, hasn't been rusted through anywhere. So we've got a good frame, a good place to start. I'm going to have to narrate this because unfortunately the microphone I was wearing decided to not record on the video. So I'm going to do my best to interpret what I'm doing for you. Please forgive me if my hand gestures and everything don't match up to what I'm saying. We're going to start right here with one of the first pieces. Basically, we're just taking all of the seams apart for all of the pieces. Being as careful as possible because, you know, this is really, really old fabric and fragile, and we don't want to rip it if possible so that we can lay it out nice and flat on a piece of paper to transfer and make a pattern. Most of this stuff was kind of stinky, and after I got each of the pieces laid out and flattened, I took Febreze to each one of them. Can't stick it in the washing machine because it is wool and very fragile, so I didn't want to destroy it. So I just Febrezed it and folded it and put it off to the side after the pattern was made. You know, keep it for posterity as an example of what the original fabric was like. So all of these, the seam ripper, you know, going stitch by stitch, kind of give it a little pull to break. The string is supposed to be weaker than the fabric itself. So there we got our first piece separated. I'm going to break this apart, and you can see that this is, you know, the back side of the seat backs. And right there you can see that there's a little piece that's attached to that inside edge that folds over and is actually tacked down to the back side of the frame. This is the only seat back that had that intact. As you remember, on the other seat back, that bottom peninsula down there was completely ripped off. So I have to be very, very careful with this one because one, it is like a Egyptian papyrus, so fragile, and I need to, you know, be as careful as possible so that I can transfer this before it gets destroyed. What I'm doing now is making sure that before I take one of these curved seams apart, I want to give myself some reference points right there. See how I'm marking it? I want to give myself a reference point on each side of the seam so that when I go to put it back together, I have those reference points of where to pin it and how the curve actually went together. Bigger curves take fewer reference points. Tighter curves I tend to do more because it's a little bit more stretching and positioning of that fabric together to get them right. So we're going to do a couple of these reference points, and then once we've got that, we can go ahead and split that seam delicately, which is what we've done here. So like I said, I'm not going to wash them, but I'm going to try and make it as clean as possible. Lots and lots and lots of dust was on this. I did vacuum each one of them as well, but here I'm just kind of getting some of the larger little pieces of string and everything off of it. Again, being very delicate around those selvage edges because, or seam allowances, because that tended to be the most fragile area. And once it was cleaned off, give it a nice fold up, put it off to the side, and wait for that pattern piece to be made. Gentle, gentle, gentle there. See how loopy it is. All right, this piece here, yep, that is 2 pieces of fabric there, and it looks awful. But because all of the entire seam was there, and both sides of the seam, fabric on each side was there, I will be able to make a pattern piece off of this. I'm very thankful that the material that I have is striped, because you can lay it out once you get it nice and flat. You can lay it out and ensure that all of the stripes are going the same direction. So with this one, really, really super fragile and almost nothing. I was amazed that I was actually able to make a pattern piece off of it, but enough is there to do it. So just like with the other one, I'm going to be making some reference points on this. And you'll notice there right in front of my hand, that is a really, really tight corner to sew around. So we'll be making a lot more reference points inside of that curve. So I'm laying it out here to make sure that there isn't anything really kind of missing. And assessing what is missing. Right there, I'm making sure that that seam fabric goes all the way to the end so that I'm sure I know how long it is and how it was constructed. Now I'm going to be able to, see it's there, I'm going to be able to make a pattern because right there, that piece right there, I could determine that that piece length was complete. So I know how wide that piece of fabric was, so I can just basically keep that same width all the way around the piece of fabric to make the final pattern piece for it. once I lay it out on the paper, I'll just follow that same distance with a little ruler or whatever to keep my distance the same, and I'll know what those curves are supposed to look like. Now I'm going to make those reference points. Being very, very gentle on it. This one was difficult because there was so little fabric that I needed to like really manipulate each side of the seam to make sure I was marking it, you know, true to itself. And then also in a spot where there was going to be enough meat that I could actually make a mark on the wraparound side. Now this fabric, like I said, it just wraps around to the other side, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm trying to make a pattern as close as possible to the original. Now that we're in that really, really tight corner, I'm going to start making my reference points much closer together. Always one at the peak of the corner or the curve to make sure, and that's usually where your starting point is when you want to pin the two pieces of fabric together, the starting point, and then go out from there. And it usually makes it so you line it up correctly. Very fiddly, very fragile. So there, I've got that last one going in. Okay, so I got the fragile pieces off, and this is where it felt like an archaeological dig. Look at that little stripe of fabric that came off of that wraparound. I'm using my iron. This is wool, so it's got to be pretty hot, but the steam is actually very, very helpful in kind of making the fabric a little bit supple again. It did break as I was taking it apart, but that's okay. It was just a very, very thin spot. It wasn't, I didn't lose any material from it, but I did pin it back together so I didn't lose any, or keep the reference of where those pieces go together. So here I'm trying to iron it out flat, get the what am I doing there? Okay, yeah, so I've got to use my fingers really, really close to the iron to make sure that that edge, seam edge, gets flattened out, so I know, the basic structure and shape of the piece. Yep, you got to have kind of strong fingers. Resist some steam on this. So felt like I was, unwrapping the Dead Sea Scrolls at this point. Just trying to be as careful as possible on the super fragile fabric. Here we're making the turn, the corner, and you just have to be patient. Use a lot of steam, and just try not to get frustrated. You can see on that side that I've already finished, you can kind of see the width of that piece in its final form. You can also see how much of it's been chewed away or destroyed. Like I said, I think that this part of the seat was sitting in water, exposed to water or something like that, because it just made it stick to the metal, fragile. I was definitely very worried about this. So there's that little bitty piece. See that little strip of fabric that's connecting the two of them? Yeah, gotta be careful with this. But like I said, I was able to do it because I didn't lose any material, and also because the material is striped and it was cut from one piece of fabric. That means that all you have to do is align those stripes, get them going straight, all the same direction, and you can know what shape that piece was originally cut. Yeah, try to get my hands out of there as much as possible. Put those fingers away, save the tips of my fingers. the stripes lined up as much as possible. Because if you can press it flat in as close to its original position as possible, it does hold its shape pretty well. Now we're going to try and line it up and make sure that we can verify kind of what this thing looked like originally. I think it's just a kind of a simple L. Here we go. I'm looking at the stripes now. On that long, thicker piece, lots of stripe reference in that. And then since the piece that's there at my fingers is going across the fabric, lots of stripe reference there too. It's just a matter of making sure they all line up, go in the same direction, and you will have your final shape of the piece. Just like that. And now we're going to make sure we get it pinned back together nicely and off to the side very gently in a very safe location, and get ready to move on to the next piece, but keep this safe for when we actually get around to making the pattern piece for it. This was the worst piece by far. This was the smallest, most fragile, so this is the extreme version. Most everything else was fairly easy and intact. Even the top of the seat bottom that had the big butt wear hole in it was relatively easy to do because I had enough of the outside. So comparatively, here's that other piece, which comes down to it, it's a long rectangle. It does have a big hole in the bottom there, but all I gotta do is iron it flat, and it's a rectangle. Okay, we're gonna do our first pattern piece here. This is the seat back fabric piece. So the one that's on the, not what your back's going up against, but behind the seat. So got just a nice thick paper, not cardboard or anything, just a thicker paper to make my pattern pieces on. This is going to be one of those things where you have to just kind of plan out in advance. So this is a wide piece of fabric, but you can fold it over and make the pattern simpler. With this piece, it's not symmetric when you fold it in half, but that's okay. We can make adjustments for that. It's not symmetric because of the construction method of the seat itself. It's different on one side than the other, which is okay. When we go ahead and make the drawing of this piece, we'll do the largest outside line first, and then when we're done with that, we'll come back and fold that outside piece in, lay the shorter side out, and make a second drawing on the same pattern piece. That's what I'm saying right there. And when we get to it, you'll see what I'm doing. I'm also laying out the pattern piece. The stripe of the fabric is going to go in this direction. It goes, when they make this textile, the stripes always go the length of the fabric. So I'm making sure to lay out my pattern pieces as they would have been on the original piece of fabric when they were cut. For straight lines, like the bottom there, I'm just going to make reference points on the edge of the fabric and then the final point of it, and then I'll come back with a straight edge to make it nice. I don't need to try and freehand a straight line there. But the long curved side, I will freehand that as close as possible. Doesn't have to be perfect. When you're cutting your fabric out, you know, you are much better at making smooth curves than having to stop every couple of inches and adjust your fingers. So there we're doing that first outside edge. When I come around this edge right here, you'll see I'm not doing a perfect smooth curve, but it's enough for me to know what to do. So you don't have to go for perfection here. And of course, we just come up. You don't have to go all the way to the far edge of the fold because it gets to the point where it's flat, and you can just use the straight part of the fabric for that. So now that that outside one is done, we're going to fold it in and under. And you'll be able to see when we fold this back out just how unsymmetric it is, but that's okay. We'll now trace that edge onto the paper and then make notes for ourselves to know exactly what to do when we're actually cutting this fabric out of the real material. Best not to have a lot of caffeine before you do this. Best not to have shaky hands. Easier said than done. And there's the core of it. First pattern piece. A whole bunch more to do now. So there you have it, our first pattern piece made. Marked which piece it is, marked the fold, and gave myself a note about each of the opposite sides. So now, just a matter of doing the rest of the pieces, and also paying attention to the fact that the stripe or the pattern is most likely going to go like this. Since we have a fold, I don't need to mark the position of the pattern to make sure it matches, but I'll need to pay attention on the rest of the pieces that aren't on fold, which direction the pattern goes, and mark that on there. And there you have it. The entire upholstery pattern set for 1939 coupe. And voila. Now, time to acquire some fabric and get busy cutting. And here are all those pattern pieces laid out on one piece of fabric. Takes just about 4 yards. Now this is just some striped muslin that I'm going to use as a mule. I'm going to build up the interior and make sure it fits on there to make, and then make any adjustments as I need to. So yes, this is 4 yards of fabric. There'll be a little bit of extra down there which I can use for the interior panels and any extraneous stuff that I might want to find, or if I find that I need some fabric for, I might choose to use it for that. Now, the fabric that I'm getting is going to be 54 inches wide, and this is only 48 inches wide of fabric, so I have adjusted it, which is why one edge is here. But you'll see 27, half of 54, so I put the fold on the 27, and I built it in the pattern arrangement for a 54-inch wide piece of fabric. So that is making a pattern and estimating your yardage that you're going to need for your upholstery. I hope this is helpful to everyone, and I hope it works. We'll see you in the future. Thanks for watching. Take care.